This is Asbog, and here is Warhammer Total War II, the new expansion for the Total Warhammer series. Warhammer 2 surpasses Warhammer 1 in many aspects and gameplay. It's taken me a while to try to get this to work. My audio was having some issues, but let's jump into it and let's evaluate what's so awesome about this and the Tomb Kings expansion. I'm going to talk about some of the history behind the Tomb Kings. We're going to look at some of the basics. Then we're going to continue my Let's Play series on my Let's Play channel. But go to video number 7 because I've been having some audio issues. But if you want to check out the first few videos for that, that's fine as well. But just take a look. We have 2 campaigns in this game. One is Eye of Storm, the other is Mortal Empires. Eye of Storm has a limited amount of playable races exclusive just to Warhammer 2. Warhammer 1 has a bunch of other races and a different campaign version. Eye of the Vortex actually is more objective-based campaign, which is really cool about it, and so that's what makes it really great. Mortal Empires, on the other hand, has many more playable races and has the entire amount of races. We're going to go through that right now of all the races that you can play. You have the High Elves, you have the Lizard Men, you have the Dark Elves, you have the Skaven, we have the new Tomb Kings, you have Karl Franz of the Empire, we have the nasty little dwarves, we have Britonia, the chivalrous knights, we have the Wood Elves and the God of Orion. We have the Orcs, of course, my #1 pick, of course, to win these games. We have the Undead, or the Vampire Counts, played as Men from von Karstein. We have Archon, the Ever-Chosen, for the Chaos Hordes. And we have the Beastmen Hordes as Karazek the One-Eyed. So some of these are expansions from the first Warhammer, and you can see that from the downloadable content, and you can load them up. I had to reinstall the games on my new PC here, and it loaded up all the DLC automatically. But for other players that already have the game and already different versions, loading the DLC was a little challenging. Hope they fix that. We're going to focus in on the Tomb Kings though today. And a little bit of we're going to focus in on Settra, the Imperishable, and that Let's Play campaign. I'm on turn 77 or so in that game. But let's look at each of the individual kings and the Lord's abilities. So these guys are obviously undead. They have this race of guys has mortuary, collect valuable trading goods and combine them with canopic jars to craft magical items, and legions of legend, dynasties, which is like the research, which you can get powerful lords and powerful unlocking abilities with each dynasty expansion. Realm of Souls, use incantations on the battlefield for summoning the dead back to life. This guy has Public Order, Growth +10, -1 Providence Capital Building, Leadership Aura size massive at 100 + 100%. Casualty replenishment rate for the Tomb Guard and Skeletal Knights +10%, not a big deal. These guys are mountainous. This is a mortuary cult guy, but he has -40 relationship with the Dark Elves. Campaign movement range, all armies +5%. But the interesting thing, it's a mountainous climate group. Hero capacity +2 for Lich Priests and +3 for ranks for the Lich Priests. So this is a mortuary cult guy. High Queen Kaladina. She's a jungle climate, which is interesting. She has good diplomatic relationships with all other Tomb Kings. More of missile-based armies, which +20% ammunition. All poison attacks within her own Lord's army, and then -50% attrition. Archon the Black, the right-hand man of Nagash himself. He has some recruitment for vampire count units, as we can see here with his Crypt Ghouls. -20% with all Tomb Kings, so all the other Tomb Kings hate him. And then he does vampiric, I think he probably does vampiric corruption. And then +5 melee for all heroes. +5 defense for all embedded heroes within the Lord's army. So, okay, we're going to focus in on Settra. And I usually play it on hard difficulty. That's where the campaign will be at. And you can follow that full version of the campaign over on my Let's Play channel. And the first few videos, I didn't have it mixed correctly. So I'm using OBS, and it's streaming through the HD card now. So you can see my beautiful, lovely orc face in every game I play, which will be great now. It also helps out with streaming the games, and so we don't get drop frames. Getting a new graphics card, the 1050i. Let's listen to the story here.
Settra, greatest of all kings, your civilization lies in mere ruins of its former glory. Much must be done to restore greatness to your kingdom, and for all to fear your wrath once more. To the north, sire, savage greenskins threaten to raid your lands. They defile your mortuary shrines. Vengeance must be taken. More greenskins and Skaven dwell in the mountains to the east, sire. They pose a potential future threat, while regions further south are already occupied by the Necrarch Brotherhood, sucking dry what life there still is in the desert. But these, great king, are but more distractions to a grander plan. The Black Pyramid stands guarded for now by a sentinel army. Control it and claim its dark secrets, and with it unimaginable power.
For now.
You are Settra the Imperishable, and all shall obey your rule.
So the Tomb Kings, how do they play? We have the Books of Nagash. Scattered far and wide throughout the world, the Books of Nagash, once collectible, grant you great powers and unique rewards. The Tomb Kings faction can recruit units into their armies without the need to pay for their recruitment or upkeep. Instead, the unit has a limited initial recruitment capacity, which can be increased by constructing buildings, additional military buildings, really. Dynasties, we kind of talked about that before. The Tomb Kings factions must delve into the past to increase the number of armies or heroes they can field to enlist in the aid of the mighty lords from ancient dynasties. Pretty cool. And they have a mortuary cult where we can spend our Canepic jars, where the Lich Priests combine them with trade resources to craft magical items to awaken legions of legend. Mighty warriors can be recruited into battle. And then you have this meme sort of title, Mighty Settra, and go through a ton of his lords and a ton of his styles. It's kind of memey. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the history of the Tomb Kings in relations to this expansion. So first of all, the Tomb Kings, we got to go back with the history of Nagash. Nagash is a very ambitious and powerful student of the mortuary cult, becoming the youngest head of the mortuary cult back thousands of years ago. And then suddenly some dark elves arrived and taught Nagash some evil dark magic. And he began to study and learn necromancy. And the Tomb Kings race of people, like the ancient Egyptians, obsessed with death, necropolises, and the passing to the afterlife. So Nagash studied and learned how to manipulate this death, became very powerful, and surpassed his master very quickly. He was a quick student and very intelligent. But he was evil, and so he killed the dark elf and made her serve him. And his power grew, and Settra was the king at the time. And that's who we're playing as right now in the Tomb Kings. And Nagash's power grew and grew, and eventually was able to overthrow Settra, but he left him alive as he turned the entire kingdom into basically a kingdom of dead, soldiers to do his tireless bidding. Nagash had learned to master death, and his flesh from his bones decayed off, and he was no longer even human. But he was becoming something more, something even more powerful. Settra was watched and forced to watch his kingdom be destroyed, and as usual, his kingdom was perished, and Nagash's evil plan was commenced even more. But the armies saw this, and Nagash was defeated. in one way. And he was defeated by, I think, the Skaven at the time. And his bones were grounded up into fine dust. Skaven and men and so forth and the races took his bones to the four corners of the world and blew them into the wind so he may never return, to spread his evil dark magic throughout the land of the dead, which is where the Tomb King's Settra kind of begins at, I believe. But that did not stop Nagash. Thousands of years passed, and his bones and the magic, the warp stone that had been grinded and absorbed into them, began to flow towards one another, back, I believe, to the sarcophagus in the giant pyramid of Nagash, an impenetrable floating fortress. And eventually Nagash's bones and dust began to drip in, one drop of black soot every year, and his bones reformed, and the demigod of Nagash was returned to wreak havoc upon the living. And rumors began to stir that the dead had begun to rise again in the wastelands of the desert. Men and Skaven began to investigate, but no one ever returned. And indeed, Nagash's army grew, and he began to mine the warp stone there. And the Skaven wanted the warp stone. So men and Skaven began to plot as Nagash's army an ultimate plan to destroy the entire world and captivate it and make it serve him through the dead. So the man and Skaven formed together, and they forged a powerful weapon and knew the back secret passages into the Black Pyramid of Nagash, and snuck in this hero of man into it. It struck down Nagash, cutting off his arm, and then slaying him once again and destroying Nagash for perhaps all time. His bones were destroyed once again. They were smashed and pulverized, and Nagash is once again destroyed. But the story does not end there. Nagash's magic is so powerful that he's resummoned the Tomb Kings in a preliminary summoning. And is it true that Nagash is returning once again, and the land of the dead will return once again? The prophecy that the dead will once again rise and destroy the Warhammer universe. Will it happen again? And this is where our story begins here with the Tomb Kings. Pretty amazing. We play Settra, one of the guys that Nagash, I think, killed during this first age in our first part of that story. Settra is a pretty badass character, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Tomb Kings. We're going to look at some of their research and kind of like how they play. So this is their dynasties. So their dynasties take 14 turns, and their research is increased every time. We could actually jump to any dynasty we wanted to, actually, but I just kind of go through each dynasty sequentially. But you can jump to the last dynasty, I think. You don't need to we don't need to do anything. And so here's a bunch of really awesome dynasties, but each time you activate a dynasty, the research rate is dropped by 30%. But this is how you get more armies as the Tomb Kings. Each time you get a dynasty, you get an additional army, and the army upkeep costs nothing. If we actually go to Settra himself, we go to recruit units. We can only recruit, say, 2 skeletal horse guys, but it costs us nothing to recruit them, and there's no other little thing below us to show us the upkeep of the unit, which is nice. So it helps us out with the micromanagement. And then we can of course buff this. We can buff the how many we recruit through buildings and general perks. So it's not a big problem. The research, so we can't really do anything for 14 turns. And each dynasty gives us a powerful lord to command. So the first, after you get the dynasty done, we want to try to get the 200 canopic jars. So when we do recruit that second faction, we can get that lord in there, because we can't like swap that lord out very easily. It's difficult. So Settra's, you can recruit these units. They cost nothing to maintain, so they build up large, you have large meat shield units, and you can acquire gold. So it's very convenient. Let's talk about Settra's starting position in our Let's Play campaign. He's right next to the Pyramid in Nagash. There's some bad guys over here. I'm on turn 77, which is continue on the Let's Play channel. And then there's some also bad guys here. And you have some Archon the Black is over here, which is a direct servant of Nagash, the right-hand man of Nagash, who helped Nagash escape once from an attack upon him, and Archon was killed in the process. There's a lot more history to Nagash. There's other YouTube videos you can check it out on, but it's a really interesting story, a really interesting bad guy. And we're going to continue playing this game on our Let's Play channel. Like I said, the first 6 videos, there was an issue with the sound mixing. For whatever reason, if I plugged in my thing, the HD Pro Elgato would not record the sound, so I've had to mix it onto this PC. And I don't have a mixer at this time to mix everything perfectly together, because you know how computers can be, they can be kind of buggy as we're trying to run multiple things on these computers. So check out the Let's Play channel on our other channel, like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next chapter.